Your shadow isn't just bad traits you hide, it's the part of yourself you had to exile to survive. Maybe it was your anger because it wasn't safe to be angry in your house. Maybe it was your softness because the world taught you that vulnerability gets you hurt. And here's the wild part: your birth chart, it's literally a map showing you exactly where you buried those parts. I'm going to show you how to read it, and I promise this is going to make so much sense. If you're new here, I'm Desiree, and welcome to Desiree Integrates. This is where we blend astrology, somatic practices, and depth psychology, because honestly, you can't do real transformation through just one lens. Your birth chart shows you the map, psychology helps you understand the patterns, and your body is where this all actually lives. So we're bringing it all together. That's what we do here. All right, let's get into it. So let's start with what shadow work actually means, because it's become this buzzword that people throw around without actually understanding it. Carl Jung, the psychologist who coined the term, said the shadow is everything about ourselves that we've rejected, repressed, or refused to acknowledge. And here's the thing: we don't do this because we're broken or we're messed up. We do it because we had to. Think about when you were a kid, maybe expressing certain emotions got you punished. Maybe being too much meant people left. Maybe taking up space meant conflict. So your psyche did what it had to do to keep you safe. It buried those parts, pushed them down into the basement of your consciousness. But here's what Jung understood: those parts don't just disappear. They don't die. They live in the shadows, and they run the show from behind the scenes, showing us self sabotage, triggers, and they can also show up as patterns that you can't seem to break. And until you turn around and actually look at them, you're not really free. Now, astrology and psychology are actually speaking the same language here. They just use different words. Your birth chart isn't about predicting the future, it's about understanding the blueprint you came in and the wounds you picked up along the way. Every placement in your chart that feels difficult, that's not punishment. It's a marker showing you where the work is. It's like your soul left the breadcrumbs back to the parts of yourself that you lost. So let's talk about the specific places in your chart that show your shadow material. The places that, when you learn to read them, suddenly make your whole life make sense. First up, your eighth house. This is what you're afraid to feel. The eighth house rules intensity, transformation, the stuff that's too much, too raw, too real. It's about emotional depth, power dynamics, sexuality, death, rebirth, all the things polite society taught us not to talk about at dinner. Whatever sign is in your eighth house cusp, that's the energy you're terrified to fully embody when it comes to the deep, intense experience. If you've got Aries in your eighth house, you might be afraid of your own rage or your raw desire for power. If it's Cancer, you might be terrified of how deep your need for emotional fusion actually goes. Libra, you might avoid the reality that transformation is rarely fair or balanced. And the planets in your eighth house, those show you what got tangled up with shame and fear. Venus in the eighth might mean that you learn that your desire was dangerous. Mars in the eighth could mean your anger or sexuality got shamed. Saturn there, you might have learned to be afraid of your own power. The shadow work here is learning that intensity isn't dangerous, repressing it is. Now let's talk about the 12th house. And this is where it gets really deep. The 12th house is what you've completely repressed. This isn't just I'm uncomfortable with this. This is, I genuinely don't see this about myself. The 12th house is called the house of self undoing. And that's because this is where we sabotage ourselves without even realize we're doing it. It's the patterns running so deep in your subconscious that they feel like fate. Let's say you have Mars in the 12th. You might genuinely believe you're not an angry person. You might pride yourself on being calm, easygoing, never confrontational. But people around you might describe you as passive aggressive. Or you might have chronic health issues related to suppressed anger. The rage is there. You just can't see it. Sun in the 12th, you might struggle to know who you even are because your identity got completely eclipsed early on. Maybe you had to disappear to keep the peace in your family. The sign in your 12th house shows the energy you've sent into exile. And here's the thing about the 12th house, this is spiritual territory. This is about dissolving the boundaries between you and everything you've rejected and actually integrating it back in. It's hard work, but it's the most liberating work you'll ever do. Okay, Pluto. Wherever Pluto is in your chart is where power got corrupted. This is where you either had power taken from you or you learned to use power in destructive ways. It's where you experience betrayal, manipulation, or where you learn that vulnerability equals annihilation. Pluto in the 4th house, something in your home or family taught you that emotional safety was an illusion. Maybe there was a parent who wielded power through control or fear. So now you might have a really hard time trusting family or home as a safe space. Pluto in the 7th, relationships became the arena where power got twisted. Maybe you attract partners who try to control you, or maybe you're the one who unconsciously tries to control them. Either way, there's this underlying fear that if you're not in control, you'll be destroyed. The shadow work with Pluto is learning that you can be powerful without being destructive, and that you can be vulnerable without being annihilated. It's reclaiming power by integrating it, not wielding it as a weapon. Saturn is where shame lives, straight up. Whatever house Saturn is in, that's where you learn you weren't good enough. That's where you internalize the message that you have to prove your worth. You have to earn your place. You have to be perfect to be acceptable. Saturn in the 10th house, you learn that your value is tied to your achievements and your public reputation. So you became the overachiever, the one who can never rest because if you're not producing, you're worthless. Saturn in the 5th, you learn that your creativity, your playfulness, your self expression, that stuff is invaluable. Maybe you were told to be serious, to grow up, to stop being too much. So now being spontaneous or creative feels almost dangerous. The shadow here is the critic, that voice that tells you you're not enough. And the work is recognizing that voice isn't truth. It's just old programming. Saturn wants you to build something real. But first, you have to demolish the shame that's been running the show. Last one, the South Node. This is a pattern you're unconsciously repeating. The South Node represents what feels familiar, what you default to, what you've already mastered, and also what you need to release. It's the comfortable dysfunction, the coping mechanism that used to protect you, but now it's just keeping you stuck. South Node in Pisces, you might default to escaping, dissociating, playing the victim or the martyr. It feels safe because it's what you know, but it keeps you from standing in your power. South Node in Capricorn, you learn to overfunction, to be the responsible one, to never meet anyone. And now the pattern is stay in control, stay isolated, don't let anyone see you struggle ever. The work is consciously moving towards your North Node, but you can't do that until you see what you're gripping onto. So, how do you actually work with these placements? Now that you've identified the placements in your chart, what do you do with them? So here's the thing. Awareness is the first step, but it's not the whole journey. You can't just intellectually understand your shadow. You have to feel it, meet it, integrate it. Start by getting curious instead of critical. When you notice a pattern playing out, maybe you're self-sabotaging again. Maybe that 8th house fear is coming up. Instead of judging yourself, just notice it. Oh, there's that thing. There's that part of me that I learned to be afraid of. Then ask, what is this part of me trying to protect me from? Because every shadow pattern started as protection. Your 12th house repression kept you safe once. Your Saturn shame kept you striving. These mechanisms worked until they didn't. Journal on them, sit with them. Notice when they're activated in real life. And if you can, Work with a therapist or guide who understands both psychology and astrology, because this work can bring up a lot. The goal isn't to get rid of these parts, it's to bring them into light, understand them, and integrate them. That's when they stop running your life from the shadows. Your birth chart is a gift. It's a map back to yourself, to all of yourself, even the parts you thought you had to leave behind. So I want to invite you. Pull up your birth chart, look at your 8th house, your 12th house, where Pluto and Saturn are sitting, and where your south node is, and just notice. Notice what comes up. Notice what feels uncomfortable or true, or like it's touching something you haven't looked at in a long time. That discomfort, that's not a problem. That's the doorway. If you resonated with this, drop a comment telling me what placement hit home. I read every single comment and I love hearing what you're discovering about yourselves. And if you want to go deeper, I'll include my contact information below on ways we can work together. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing the work. I'll see you in the next one.